Elon Musk lived as a homeless person for a week? You won't believe what happens at the end of the story. Before we dive in, hit the subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Elon Musk adjusted the tattered hoodie that hung loosely over his shoulders. He glanced at his reflection in the cracked glass of a closed shop window and barely recognized himself. The usually clean-shaven face he saw every day was now covered by an itchy, scruffy fake beard that chafed against the cold December wind. The billionaire entrepreneur, whose name was synonymous with cutting-edge technology and space exploration, now looked like just another shadow lost in the streets of San Francisco. And that was exactly what he wanted. Elon had spent weeks preparing for this journey, watching documentaries, reading first-hand accounts, and studying the city's homelessness crisis from every angle. Yet nothing could fully prepare him for the reality he was about to step into. His heart raced as he took his first steps into the Tenderloin district, a part of the city infamous for its stark contrast between wealth and poverty. The smells of urine and street food mingled in the air, while the distant wail of sirens and murmured conversations echoed around him. He tightened his grip on the strap of his worn-out backpack, which carried only the bare essentials: a water bottle, a cheap notebook, a pencil, and a few crumpled dollar bills. Elon's plan was simple yet audacious: spend 7 days living on the streets, experiencing homelessness firsthand. He had always believed that innovation was the solution to the world's most pressing problems. But something about this particular crisis stuck with him. Homelessness wasn't just a lack of shelter, it was a failure of imagination, a system that overlooked human potential. The challenges hit Elon quicker than he'd expected. As the sun sank below the horizon, the temperature plummeted, biting through his thin hoodie and jeans. He hadn't prepared for the bone-deep chill of a December night on the streets, a sharp reminder of how reliant he was on the comforts of his usual climate-controlled environments. Every breath came with a misty puff of air, and every minute felt longer than the last. Elon had naively assumed that he'd figure out the basics, like where to sleep, as he went along. But now, standing under the dim, flickering orange glow of a street lamp, he realized how flawed that assumption had been. His body, more used to ergonomic chairs and high-tech workspaces, already felt stiff and sore from the constant walking. Pedestrians passed him by, their glances fleeting or avoidant. He felt like a ghost, invisible in a way he hadn't experienced in decades. It wasn't the kind of invisibility that came from fame, where people recognized him but pretended not to look. This was different. To them, he simply didn't exist. Hours stretched on as he wandered aimlessly, the ache in his feet spreading up his legs. The sneakers he'd bought for this journey, picked for their worn and inconspicuous appearance, offered little support against the hard pavement. He began to notice how the streets morphed as the city settled into nighttime. The sounds changed. The distant hum of rush-hour traffic gave way to sporadic sirens and murmured conversations. The smells, a mix of street food, gasoline, and decay, clung to the cold air. Finally, he came across a narrow alley. It was quieter than the main street, with shadows stretching long and dark under the faint light of a nearby lamppost. The ground was littered with broken cardboard boxes, empty cans, and random odds and ends that hinted at the lives that had passed through here. Elon stopped, unsure. The alley felt as safe as anything could feel in this unfamiliar world. But safe was a relative term out here. Would stepping into this space be trespassing? Would he be met with hostility? He hesitated at the entrance, his mind racing through possibilities. Just as he took a cautious step forward, a figure emerged from the shadows. The man's face was thin and angular, illuminated by the warm but uneven glow of a makeshift candle. His clothes hung loosely on him, a mismatched collection of layers likely scavenged over time. Lost or something? the man asked, his voice rough but carrying an undertone of curiosity rather than threat. Elon stiffened, caught off guard. He quickly ran through the backstory he'd rehearsed before embarking on this journey. "Just looking for a place to rest," he said, his voice steady but low. The words felt foreign, though they had been practiced in the comfort of his home. The man regarded him for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a shrug, he stepped back into the shadows. "Suit yourself. Just don't touch my stuff." Relieved, Elon nodded. "Thanks," he said, though the man was already walking away. He chose a spot against the wall, one that seemed far enough away to respect the man's territory, but still sheltered from the slight breeze blowing through the alley. As he lowered himself onto the cold, unforgiving concrete, a wave of discomfort hit him. His muscles, unaccustomed to this kind of strain, protested as he shifted to find a position that was at least bearable. The cold seeped into his bones almost immediately. He pulled his hoodie tighter around his face, as if the thin fabric could offer any real protection. He tried to block out the chaotic symphony of city noises, distant shouting, the occasional clatter of a can rolling along the ground, and the persistent hum of the streets beyond the alley. His stomach growled, but the hunger felt like a distant ache compared to the immediate challenge of staying warm. For the first time in years, Elon felt small, vulnerable, and utterly exposed. This wasn't a controlled experiment or a simulation. This was raw, unfiltered reality, and he was in the thick of it. Yet, even as exhaustion began to creep over him, his mind refused to slow down. He glanced around the alley, his engineer's eye drawn to the details. The man had set up a surprisingly resourceful little corner. The candle, placed inside an old glass jar, provided both light and a semblance of warmth. Makeshift shelves had been constructed from wooden planks and plastic crates, holding an assortment of items that likely had more value here than they ever had in a store. A tarp, stretched taut between two corners of the wall, served as a crude but effective barrier against rain. Elon couldn't help but marvel at the ingenuity. In the tech world, this level of resourcefulness would have been celebrated, praised as a disruptive innovation. Here, it was survival. He made a mental note, his mind churning with ideas, resourcefulness in adversity, untapped potential. This wasn't just about observing anymore. This was about understanding, deeply and personally, what people could achieve when left with almost nothing. The first light of dawn crept through the narrow gap between two crumbling buildings, casting dim streaks across the cold, unforgiving ground. Elon stirred from his restless sleep, the chill of the concrete seeping into his bones even after a few hours of fitful rest. His back ached as he sat up, stiff and sore from the unyielding pavement. The faint echo of the night lingered, distant arguments, hurried footsteps, and the ever-present hum of the city, a lullaby of survival that never truly quieted. Rubbing the sleep from his eyes, Elon took his first real look at the alley in daylight. It was stark and unremarkable to the casual observer, a forgotten strip of urban decay cluttered with trash, empty cans, and plastic bags that fluttered lazily in the faint breeze. But to Elon, it felt like an intricate puzzle, a compact universe of resilience and ingenuity. He spotted a flipped-over shopping cart at the alley's entrance, serving as an improvised barrier. A bundle of old, tattered blankets marked what could only be someone's claimed sleeping spot. In one corner, a small fire pit constructed from broken bricks sat dormant, its ashes still faintly gray, a fleeting trace of warmth from the night before. To most, these were signs of desolation, but to Elon's eyes, they were markers of adaptation, fragments of a story about surviving against the odds. As he cataloged the details, his engineer's mind kicked into gear, analyzing the subtle functionality of these makeshift solutions. A tarp draped haphazardly over the corner of a wall could offer shelter from the rain. The shopping cart could double as storage and a barricade. It was improvisation at its core, a stark testament to human ingenuity under pressure. The stillness of the morning was interrupted by movement. A wiry man, perhaps in his late 30s, emerged from a pile of flattened cardboard stacked near the alley wall. He stretched, his thin frame arching awkwardly, and let out a deep yawn. His clothes were mismatched and threadbare, but they were clean. His sharp eyes darted around the alley with a practiced efficiency, scanning his surroundings like someone who had long learned to navigate danger. "New guy, huh?" he said bluntly, his voice rough but not unkind. Elon froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. His rehearsed backstory flashed through his mind. A recently divorced man who'd lost his job and spiraled into homelessness. It had seemed plausible in theory, but now, faced with the reality of someone who lived this life every day, it felt hollow and forced. "Just trying to figure things out," Elon said finally, keeping his tone neutral. The man smirked, his lips curling into a wry grin that lacked any real humor. "Aren't we all?" He extended a hand, calloused and worn, yet firm in its grip. "Name's Michael." Eli," Elon said, catching himself mid-slip. He used the shortened version of his name, hoping it sounded natural enough. "Just down on my luck, I guess." Michael raised an eyebrow, his expression skeptical but uninterested in probing further. "All right, Eli, welcome to the alley. Rules are simple. Don't steal, don't snitch, and don't cause trouble. You stick to that, and we won't have a problem. Got it?" "Got it," Elon replied, nodding. He was grateful for the straightforwardness, even if the words carried an undercurrent of warning. Michael leaned against the wall and crossed his arms, studying Elon with the sharp gaze of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. "You're not from around here," he said, more as a statement than a question. "You look like one of those guys who used to have it all together. What happened?" Elon hesitated, feeling the weight of the question. His prepared story seemed inadequate, almost insulting, in the face of someone who had no choice but to live this life. "Things just fell apart," he said finally, choosing vague honesty over fabrication. Michael gave a slight shrug, as if to say it didn't really matter. "Well, Eli, keep your head down, and you'll do fine." As Michael walked off, Elon let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The exchange had been brief, but it left him feeling exposed. For all his preparation, this was a world he could never fully understand. Not yet. Still, as he watched Michael move through the alley, Elon couldn't help but feel a flicker of respect. The man carried himself with a certain unspoken dignity, a quiet resilience that came from surviving against the odds. Elon glanced at the pile of blankets in the corner and the makeshift fire pit, imagining the stories behind them. This wasn't just a place where people lived. It was a fragile ecosystem, built on unspoken rules and mutual understanding. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. As the morning light grew stronger, Elon felt a strange mix of unease and determination. He didn't belong here. Not really. But he wasn't just a tourist passing through. He had come to learn, to understand, and, eventually, to help. For now, though, he was just Eli, trying to find his place in a world that was raw, unforgiving, and, in its own way, quietly extraordinary. As days turned into weeks, Elon found himself blending more naturally into the community in the alley. What had initially seemed like a chaotic jumble of discarded lives now revealed itself as a fragile but functional ecosystem. He observed how the residents, despite their circumstances, carved out ways to survive, repurposing what others had thrown away and offering one another quiet acts of support. Elon watched as a woman with paint-smeared hands carefully arranged a stack of empty cans into a pyramid. Her focus was intense, her movements deliberate, as if the act of stacking the cans was as much about precision as it was about passing the time. Nearby, an older man sat cross-legged on the ground, hunched over a battered radio. He worked methodically, a well-worn screwdriver clutched in one hand, as he fiddled with the exposed wires and cracked casing. "That's Sarah," Michael said, nodding toward the woman. "She's an artist. Believe it or not, she can whip up some pretty amazing stuff. Sometimes she manages to sell a piece or two to tourists, enough to scrape together a meal." Elon raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "An artist?" Michael smirked. "Yeah, doesn't look like it. Huh, but she's got talent. Problem is, talent doesn't pay much out here unless you can find the right sucker who likes authentic street art." He paused, his tone softening. "Still, she keeps at it. Says it keeps her sane." "And him?" Elon asked, gesturing toward the man with the radio. "John," Michael replied. "Our tech guy. He's the closest thing we've got to a genius around here. Used to work in IT before his world went to hell. Now he fixes up old electronics, radios, phones, whatever he can get his hands on, and trades them for food or supplies." Elon's curiosity deepened. "Tech guy? Huh." Michael chuckled, his voice tinged with admiration. "Yeah, give him a roll of duct tape and something broken, and he'll make it work again. Don't ask me how, but it's like he's got magic hands or something." Elon's gaze lingered on John, who was now holding the radio up to his ear, listening intently to the faint crackle of static. The man's face, weathered by years of hardship, lit up for a brief moment as the static gave way to the faint murmur of a radio station. He adjusted a knob, fine-tuning the signal, and smiled faintly as a song emerged from the distorted speaker. "These people," Michael continued, "they're not stupid, and they're not lazy. They've got skills, real skills, but out here, none of that seems to matter. You could be a doctor, a teacher, or an engineer, and it wouldn't mean squat if you don't have a roof over your head." Elon nodded, taking in Michael's words. The stories of people like Sarah and John were emblematic of what he had come to learn. This community wasn't filled with people who had failed. It was filled with people society had failed. Sarah's pyramid of cans, as simple as it seemed, wasn't just a stack of garbage. It was a reflection of her artistry and her desire to create order in chaos. John's ability to salvage broken electronics spoke to a resourcefulness that Elon knew would be celebrated in a different context. In a corporate boardroom or a sleek office building, John would have been a valued team member. Out here, he was a survivor. Elon leaned back against the wall, his mind racing. These weren't helpless individuals waiting for charity. They were talented, creative people who had been pushed to the edges of society, forced to make do with what little they had. They didn't need pity, they needed opportunity. And as he watched John hold up the radio triumphantly, sharing the faint sound of music with the others in the alley, Elon realized something else. They needed someone who believed in them as much as they believed in themselves. One morning, Michael took Elon to a recycling center. "You've got to hustle to make it out here," Michael explained. "Cans, bottles, scrap metal, it's not glamorous, but it gets you a little cash to get through the day." Elon followed him, picking up aluminum cans, plastic bottles, and anything else that could be recycled. At first, he felt embarrassed, but he soon realized the patience and strategy required to survive. After an hour, he earned $6.42 from the collection. Michael made nearly double that, moving faster and with more experience. "Not bad for your first time," Michael remarked, "but you've got to pick up the pace. Out here, time is money." When they returned to the alley, Elon found himself reflecting on the deeper stories of these people. Sarah, the artist, was working on a painting on a piece of cardboard, a vibrant yet melancholic landscape that captured life on the streets. Michael was repairing an old phone, hoping to trade it for food. As night fell, Elon sat by the small fire, jotting down ideas in his notebook. These people weren't just surviving, they were creating. They didn't need a helping hand. They needed a system that allowed them to thrive. One evening, Elon decided to share his thoughts with Michael and Sarah. "I've been thinking," he began, "we could build a system to help people here not just survive, but create something bigger." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Something bigger? Like what?" "Like a micro-investment fund," Elon explained. "But not for big businesses, for the ideas and skills of people like us." "Sarah, you could sell your paintings for higher prices if you had a platform to market them." "Michael, your app, it could change how people find work if we rebuilt it from scratch." Sarah crossed her arms, her expression skeptical. "Sounds nice, but how would something like that even work out here? Where's the money coming from? Who's going to believe in this idea?" "We start small," Elon said, his eyes lighting up. "We just need to prove it works. A few successful projects could attract more support. This isn't charity, it's an investment. An investment in your talent and ideas." Michael thought for a moment, then asked, "So what's step one?" Elon smiled faintly. "Step one is figuring out what skills and ideas people have. Then we figure out what we need to make them a reality." Sarah sighed, but there was a flicker of hope in her eyes. "It sounds good, but I'm still not sure it's possible." "We can make it happen," Elon said confidently, "but only if we do it together." The morning air was thick with the smell of smoke from a distant fire and the faint hum of early city activity. Elon had just sat down near the makeshift fire pit, scribbling notes in his battered notebook, when he noticed David approaching. There was something different about him. His steps were quicker, more deliberate, and his face was twisted in a scowl. "I know who you are," David said, his voice cutting through the relative quiet. He didn't slow down as he came closer, his sharp tone making several heads in the alley turn. Elon looked up, his pen hovering over the page. "David, what? You're Elon Musk," David interrupted, his finger jabbing the air like an accusation. "The billionaire. Don't even try to deny it." The murmur of voices around the alley grew louder as people paused what they were doing to watch the scene unfold. Sarah, who had been sorting through her paints nearby, froze mid-motion. She turned slowly, her wide eyes locked on Elon. "What?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper, her shock palpable. "Is that true? Eli, are you really Elon Musk?" Elon let out a slow, heavy sigh. He set his notebook aside, rising to his feet. There was no point in dodging the truth anymore. "Yes," he admitted, his voice steady despite the tension hanging in the air. "I am Elon Musk." David let out a bitter, almost mocking laugh, loud enough to echo off the alley walls. "Unbelievable," he said, shaking his head. "Understand? Are you kidding me? You're a billionaire, probably the richest guy on the planet, and you're standing here, pretending to be one of us? Collecting cans and sleeping on concrete like it's some kind of game?" "It's not a game," Elon said, his tone calm but resolute. He looked David square in the eye. "I came here because I wanted to understand what life on the streets is really like, not from a report, not from a documentary, but by living it myself." David's laugh turned harsh, almost angry. "Understand? What could you possibly understand? You can walk away from this any second you want. You've got private jets and mansions waiting for you while we're out here fighting for scraps. You think sleeping in the cold for a few nights makes you one of us?" "That's true," Elon replied, holding David's fiery gaze. "I can leave. but I don't want to. I came here because I believe this community is full of untapped potential. I've seen the ingenuity, the creativity, the drive to survive. I believe in you, all of you, and I want to help build something that makes sure you don't just survive, you thrive." Sarah took a step back, her face pale. Doubt clouded her expression as she crossed her arms tightly over her chest. "But you lied to us," she said, her voice trembling. "All this time, you let us think you were just one of us." "I didn't lie," Elon said gently, turning to her. "I didn't tell you the full truth because I didn't want you to see me as someone distant, someone who can't understand your struggles. I wanted to live it, to feel it, to learn from you. This isn't about me, it's about us, about what we can do together." David sneered, folding his arms as he leaned back slightly. "Us? That's rich. Coming from you. How do we know this isn't just some PR stunt? A way for you to pat yourself on the back and get a couple of headlines about how selfless you are?" Elon stepped closer, his voice dropping but gaining weight. "You don't," he said plainly. "You don't have to trust me, not yet. Trust isn't something I expect right away. It's something I intend to earn." David glared at him, unflinching. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" "By showing you," Elon said, his voice firm now. "I'm not here to make promises I can't keep or to wave a magic wand and fix everything overnight. I'm here to work with you, to create something real. If we work together, we can change this, not just for the people here, but for communities like this everywhere." The alley buzzed with whispers as the gathered crowd tried to process what they were hearing. Some faces looked skeptical, others intrigued. A few, like Sarah, remained guarded, their emotions swirling too much to pick a side. "You better mean it," Sarah said finally, her voice softer but steady. "Because if you don't, if this is all just for show," she didn't finish the sentence, but the threat was clear. "I do mean it," Elon said, meeting her gaze with unwavering sincerity. "And I'm ready to prove it." The tension in the alley lingered even as David stalked away, muttering under his breath. Sarah remained where she was, her arms still crossed but her expression thoughtful. The others began to drift back to their routines, though the quiet hum of their voices made it clear that this revelation would be the talk of the alley for days to come. Elon sat back down on his makeshift seat by the fire, feeling the weight of what had just transpired. The path ahead was going to be even steeper now, with his identity out in the open. But he knew one thing for certain: if he could earn their trust, this moment, this confrontation, could become the turning point they all needed. Although there was initial skepticism, the community in the alley began to see changes emerge from Elon's ideas. Sarah received support to sell her artwork through an online platform. Michael started rebuilding his app with the help of a team Elon had brought in. Small success stories gradually spread, bringing hope to those who had previously only been focused on surviving day by day. One quiet evening, Elon stood in the middle of the alley, watching the fire crackle and glow. He knew this journey was only just beginning, but a spark had been lit, a spark of faith, hope, and transformation. News of Elon Musk's presence and his bold plan quickly spread across the internet. Videos and photos of Sarah's mural and Michael's app idea went viral, drawing widespread attention from the media and the public. Headlines buzzed with intrigue. Elon Musk goes undercover as homeless. Announces billion-dollar innovation fund. Sarah's mural, a new symbol of hope. Can a tech billionaire change the lives of the homeless? The once overlooked alley became the center of attention. Reporters and journalists crowded in, vying to interview Sarah, Michael, and other members of the community. Sarah stood beside her mural, more confident than ever, sharing the story of her artistic journey. "This isn't just about me," Sarah told a reporter. "It's about all of us, talented people who have been overlooked." This fund isn't charity. It's an opportunity for us to prove our worth. Meanwhile, Michael focused on developing his app, Connect Now. With the support of the team Elon brought in, the app was quickly developed and tested. Connect Now connected people with skills to those in need of assistance, everything from repairs and tutoring to crafts and handiwork. The app not only helped members of the alley find work, but also restored a sense of dignity that had long been lost. A single mother earned a living as a seamstress, while an elderly mechanic taught young people his trade. Small but impactful success stories began to emerge. This app isn't just about making money, Michael shared at the official launch event. It's about giving value and dignity back to hardworking people like us. The app quickly gained traction, attracting hundreds of users across San Francisco and the surrounding areas. Thanks to Elon's fund, Sarah was able to open a small art studio, a clean, airy space where she could create without interruptions. Her mural at the pier had become a symbol of innovation and hope, drawing crowds of locals and tourists to admire it. One evening, Sarah received an invitation to hold her first solo art exhibition at a major gallery in the heart of the city. She could hardly believe her luck. "This is a dream come true," Sarah said. "But more importantly, I want to help artists like me have the chance to prove themselves." The Ground Zero Innovations Fund, the official name of the initiative, quickly grew into a nationwide movement. Success stories from San Francisco spread, inspiring philanthropists and organizations across the United States to join the cause. In Los Angeles, the fund supported a group of homeless engineers in developing portable solar-power devices. In Chicago, an inventor created affordable solar-powered heaters for cold regions. In Atlanta, a woman launched a catering business using recipes she had perfected while living in a shelter. David, who had been one of the initiative's biggest skeptics, slowly began to change as he witnessed the real impact of the fund. Initially watching from the sidelines, he eventually got involved in community projects, helping to manage the public workshop area that Elon had funded. One evening, David sat beside Elon at the small fire pit. "I still don't fully trust you," he said, his gaze serious. "But I can't deny what you've done. People are starting to believe in themselves. That's something I've never seen before." Elon smiled, his expression resolute. "Just keep believing in them, David. That's all we need." The impact of Ground Zero Innovations extended far beyond the borders of the United States. In India, a rural innovation center was established to support inventors working in agriculture. In Kenya, the fund sponsored a project to build affordable housing using recycled materials. Elon traveled the world to meet the beneficiaries of his initiative, but he always returned to the alley, the place where it all began. The alley had undergone a complete transformation. Once a forgotten corner, it had become a hub of innovation and hope. The walls were adorned with artwork by Sarah and other local artists. A small workshop had been built, providing tools and a shared space for everyone to work and create. One evening, Elon sat alone by the small fire pit. His old disguise was long gone, but the memories of cold nights on the concrete floor were still vivid in his mind. Sarah approached, carrying a thermos of coffee. She sat down beside him, staring into the flames. "Do you ever think about how none of this would have happened if you hadn't come here?" she asked. "I think about it all the time," Elon replied. "But the truth is, I didn't change anything. You and Michael, you've always had the ability to do these things. I just helped clear the path." Sarah smiled, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "That's not nothing, you know?" They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire flicker and crackle. "Do you think it'll last?" she asked. "Absolutely," Elon said. "It'll face challenges, but I think we've started something bigger than all of us. And as long as people believe in it, it'll last forever." The fire slowly burned out, leaving the alley in quiet stillness. But this time, it wasn't a symbol of loss. It was a symbol of resilience, of a light that could always be reignited. Thank you for watching. If you found this story engaging, subscribe, share, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on future content.